Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Jeff and today we are going to have some fun talking about my top 10 favorite cards from War of the Sparks. The top 10 cards that I'm most excited to play. Not the ones I think are the absolute best. I think that this list is a little bit different from that, although there are a lot of really good cards in this. So let's go ahead and jump right into my top 10 favorite cards from War of the Sparks. So number 10, and actually I'm cheating right away here. I included all of the gods at the 10 spot because I think that all of these are so good. I don't want to spend too much time on each of these because you kind of know what they do for the most part if you guys have been following with spoilers at all. If you haven't, let me go into them a little bit here. So first off, the bottom line of text there is whenever God Eternal Ketra dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, third from the top. So the cool thing about this is that all of the gods have the same line of text where if they die or put into exile, you get to put it through from the top. So they keep coming back. The only way to really get rid of them is to make them be discarded from opponent's hand or to counter it when it comes out. So of course you can do that, but they will at least be coming back, and they get so much value. So God Eternal Ketra, double strike 3/6. So it kills Lyra. It trades off with any of the 6/6 creatures, and then it goes back into the library, so that's cool. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. So this is basically like a Resplendent Angel, except they don't have flying, but you could make that happen like 5 times on a turn if you really built around this. Anyway, so there's some really fun things you can do with God Eternal Ketra. Next up, we have Ilharg the Raised Boar, 6/6 trample. Whenever it attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, like a Galta. You can put in a Galta that's tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of your next end step. You could also be playing this with what's it called? You can be playing this with Rhythm of the Wild and get counters onto what everything's coming in. So you can have a 13/13 Galta and make sure that Ilharg actually comes in with haste or whatever. So there's so many fun things you could do with this card already. Love Ilharg. Next up, God Eternal Ronus. Ronus is so good. When it enters the battlefield, double the power of each other creature you control until end of turn. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. So I think that this can be very powerful. It even works with Ilharg where you can bring it in, make Ilharg a 12/12 as it's swinging, or a 12/6. So doubling up the power, this could be really fun doing some stuff with Thud. Anyway, I'm excited to see what we do with God Eternal Ronus. I think it's one of the weaker ones in some ways. In other ways, it's even more powerful. Like it might see a little bit more consistent play where it's not based on a combo. It's just good value for God Eternal. Anyway, God Eternal Bantu, 5/6 with Menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. I think that this is crazy with a Liliana out as well, where you can sack a couple of creatures, and if you have a Liliana, you get to draw a card, and then you also draw cards for already sacking anything. And then if you have a Cruel Celebrant out, you could even have it drain their opponents all the way down. So this is I think a really good card. I think it's going to see play very often. And even if you don't want to sack anything and draw cards, you also just have a 5/6 with Menace, which is kind of hard to deal with, especially when it keeps coming back. So I'm a big fan of God Eternal Bantu. God Eternal Kefnet, 4/5, so 4 converted mana cost, flying 4/5. So already decent, really good stats, and it keeps coming back again. You may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, copy that card, and you may cast that copy. That copy costs 2 less to cast. So I think this card will probably see the most play out of all of the control decks, or sorry, out of all of the gods because of control decks. I think that a lot of control decks, of course, are going to be wanting to play this where they can get Chemist's Insight for 2. You know, being able to play that, you do have to play it on your main phase, but with Teferis being in the format, you might be needing that anyway. So I think this is definitely going to see play. I'm not sure exactly how much, if it's just going to be like a 2 of or maybe a 1 of in a lot of control decks, but I definitely think it will be seeing lots of play. All right, into the actual top 10 here. So first off, Spark Double. I am so excited for this card. So Spark Double, you may have Spark Double enter the battlefield as a copy of creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. If it's a creature, it enters the battle. It enters with an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker, and it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So, Helm of the Host. This is basically a trigger for Helm of the Host, but you don't have to pay 9 to make it happen. You just have to pay 4, and you can copy planeswalkers as well. So Man, this card I think actually will see a lot of play in this format because of all the planeswalkers. It's just such a spice card, and that's what I love about it. Is I love the spice of Spark Double. I loved the spice of Helm of the Host, but it just never quite happened. And now you can even copy Gideon. Yeah, so anyway, I'm actually not sure how that works if it comes back down. It's not a token, so it would be able to switch back to a planeswalker as well. I mean, you can copy it as the normal planeswalker anyway, but you did anyway. This card is just exciting, and anyway, I'm really excited for this one. Finale of Promise. I didn't initially think that this card would make it into my top 10 list, but then I kind of started thinking of different ways that you could break this card. And I think that the perfect home for this card is in a burn deck. A Rakdos burn deck is probably my favorite version of this, where Finale of Promise, X and 2 red, you may cast up to 1 target instant card and or up to 1 target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less without paying their mana cost. If a card is cast this way, it would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. If X is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. So I don't think that I'm ever really planning on getting this up to X10. If it happens, it'd be awesome. But in a burn deck, this is where I think you would want to go with this. Is you can Lightning Strike, Sovereign's Bite on turn, maybe shock, whatever. You get in a lot of damage on the first early turns, and then Finale of Promise can copy a Sovereign's Bite and a Lightning Strike, and it's a 4 mana, 6 damage, and you gain 3 life card. Just with that combo. And that's not a hard combo to pull off at all. And then if you are just playing a burn deck, you could also, if you get this to X3, so for 5 mana, you can copy a Risk Factor and a Sword Point Diplomacy and possibly draw 6 off of 5 mana, or make them take, 10 damage between. There's a lot of damage that can be dealt with that. It could end up being like 13 or 12, I think. But anyway, this card, it's 13. This card can just be, man, I think it's so good in the burn deck. So I really think the Rakdos aggro deck is where this fits into. I'm not sure if it's a 2 of, because you don't want a whole play set of this, but this is definitely a really good finisher for a burn deck, just getting those last points of damage in. And anyway, so I think this is really good. All right, next up we have Essence Hydra. So Essence Hydra, there is a turn 4 kill with this card that is so fun. So what you do, so first off, 5 converted mana cost, 4/4 trample. Whenever it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each loyalty counter on planeswalkers you control. Whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are put on planeswalkers you control, put that many +1/+1 counters on Essence Hydra. So this just becomes massive. First off, this is the dream for any Simic Ascendancy deck, just with how many counters you can end up having with this if you proliferate. It first off puts counters onto Hydra, and then you put counters onto any planeswalkers, and then they put more counters onto Essence Hydra. So there's some really fun things first off with Simic Ascendancy you can do with this card. And it's not legendary, so you can end up having multiples out on the battlefield and kind of just go off with Simic Ascendancy with really big guys that can trample swing it for tons of damage. This is very often like a 10-10, because you want to be playing this, I think, with, of course, a Vivian, because then it has flash, with Kiora, because you instantly draw a card with it, and you can untap it after swinging in for damage, still have a blocker up, and also because of the turn 4 combo kill. So this is the turn 4 combo kill, and it starts off with, first off, turn 1 Llanowar. Turn 2, you play another Llanowar if you can, and you Neoform. It's a 2 mana card that basically gives the value, the trigger of Vannifar. I don't have it up on the screen right now because I don't have time to edit this one as well as I'd like to. But it would put a counter. You get to sack Llanowar Elves, go grab an Incubation Druid, and put a counter onto it with Neoform for 2 mana. Then you untap on turn 3, if you play a land and you had 2 Llanowars and Neoform in your hand, you get 7 mana on turn 3. So then you tap the Incubation Druid, play Kiora, and then you can untap target permanent, untap the Incubation Druid. So you actually have 10 mana on turn 3 between those. You have to play the Kiora though. So then you play Vivian, and so then you play Vivian, and then you have enough mana. Actually, you won't be able to play Vivian to have enough mana to play Hydra, but basically then you play Hydra. You get a massive Hydra, then you play Hedon's Climb on turn 4. Hedonist Climb puts a counter onto it. You have enough mana to pay for Hedonist Climb after it flips, and you can just swing in for I think it's a 22 creature, 24, something like that. Anyway, so really, and it's flying, trample, all that stuff. So anyway, that's the turn 4 kill with Essence Hydra, and you can do so many other things with that combo as well. So I'm just so excited for this card. It's going to be really fun to play around. All right, so next up we have Feather the Redeemed. So Feather the Redeemed, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So this is a great card where we can actually bring back pump spells or buff spells, which we didn't have that for such a long time because they just, if they remove the creature, it's not as good. But it's just if that spell targets a creature you control. So it already happens before they even kill the creature that might have been buffed with it. So you at least get value back from playing a pump spell. So Run Amok, Sure Strikes, anything, especially with creatures with flying. So I've seen a couple Boros heroic decks that are all around targeting creatures, and I think Feather is definitely going to see lots of play. First off, just for being a 3-mana, 3/4 flyer, and it's an angel, very relevant in this format. Anyway, so there's some really, really exciting things that can happen with Feather. I'm going to be playing it very often. All right, next up, Krenko, the 10-Street Kingpin. Oh my goodness, so good. All right, so 3 converted mana cost, 1/2. Whenever Krenko attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then create a number of +1/+1, 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to his power. So if you can, man, you can create so many goblins. First off, even just by itself, it's a 1/2, so it's a little bit more resilient than just a 1/1. It doesn't die to Chain Whirler or anything like that. But you can either pump this spell with a Domri with pump spells. This works really well with the Feather deck. You give it more power, and then it creates that many goblins, so you end up having tons of power on this card. Anyway, there's so many things to do with this card. It's hard to say all of them all at once. I just know that this is broken. You can end up creating a massive board of goblins just with one creature. And that's just one creature in your deck that is a 3-mana win condition by itself in a red deck. So I am really excited to see how Krenko does. I'm a little bit worried it's a little too broken. At the same time, it's easy to remove as well with the format. So we'll see how this goes. And yeah, here, let's go into the next one. So Gideon Blackblade. Man, I'm just so excited about Lord of the Spark. I feel like I'm overusing the words of I'm so excited, but I'm seriously so excited. And this is a 3 converted mana cost Planeswalker. As long as it's your turn, Gideon Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Gideon Blackblade during your turn. So it can't be dealt damage. It is indestructible, and it's still a Planeswalker. So it can be targeted by any Planeswalker spells, anything like that. And so, I mean, there's definitely ways that you can remove remove Gideon, and unfortunately, you do end up losing it. It still can be exiled, and as a creature, it's easier to be exiled, but it still is amazing. So and then you can tick up to one other target creature you control gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible until end of turn. And I think that those 3 options give this card such another level that any other creature that you have out there can also be indestructible. You can swing in with a Benelish Marshal now, give it Lifelink or Vigilance so you can have a blocker. It just gives so much value to that mono white aggro deck. And this also fits into many other cards as well, where this could be just a finisher for a control deck. And then -6 to exile target non-land permanent. So still has some removal in there as well, but most of the time you probably just want to be ticking up, keep using Gideon, keep getting value from your other creatures, and you can't target itself with Lifelink, unfortunately, or Vigilance, so it will end up getting tapped, which can die to a Silhouette, anything. So overall, I think that Gideon is just still a fantastic card. It's going to be very powerful, very aggressive. All right, next up, this is probably my favorite Planeswalker, just because I love Sarkhan. Sarkhan is so fun, but it's not in my top 1 spot because I think there are others that are just more spicy. So Sarkhan the Masterless, 5 converted mana cost for 5 loyalty. Whenever a creature attacks you or a Planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. So first off, if you play this in a Dragons deck, basically opponents can no longer attack you, because if you have 2 or 3 dragons out on the battlefield and a Sarkhan, They just can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless they want to deal with a wrath or killing that creature that comes in. As soon as you have 3 or 4, because most things die at 4 toughness. Then you and then you can +1 until end of turn. Each planeswalker you control becomes a 4/4 red dragon creature token. Yeah, dragon creature and gains flying. So it's a win condition already right there. So there's a lot of really cheap, really cheap planeswalkers right now. You know, you have Saheeli, which would work well in this color set. You know, you have the other Sarkhan. You have so many cards that work really well with. There are planeswalkers that come in. You can be playing Vivian, and then you can just have a win condition where you swing in with all your planeswalkers, and you can possibly have, you know, 5 or 5 4/4s coming in, so lethal damage by the time you're playing Sarkhan. So that's one possibility of just kind of it's his +1 ability can very well kill opponents. His next 3 creates a 4/4 dragon creature token with flying. That's typically what you're going to be doing the first time you bring him out, is just to be able to protect yourself and your planeswalkers, is to play that dragon, have blockers for their side, making sure that they can't swing in because of the static ability. Anyway, so I'm really excited to see how Sarkhan plays in this set. I think that it's probably one of the more undervalued planeswalkers from what I've been seeing, just because I think that it is a win condition all within itself for multiple types of decks. And so I'm really excited to see how Sarkhan plays in the format. Next up, number 2, we have Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge. So Tezzeret, 6 mana cost. Each creature and planeswalker spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. So affinity means that the number of artifacts you have, that creature costs that much less. So if you have, you know, your 3 treasures from flipping a treasure map, then your Karn costs 1 instead of 4. Anyway, that's the type of thing that you can do with it, as well as creatures being a lot cheaper as well. Anyway, so there's some really fun combos you can do with both of the Karns. But my favorite thing here is just its +2 ability. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You gain X life. This just reminds me of Marionette Master. If you guys remember that card from Kaladesh, whenever you would sack a treasure, it would do 3 damage to the opponent, or 4 damage, can't remember now. Anyway, so I just feel like this is that same type of ability where it just comes down, you end up gaining tons of life, draining your opponent. They have to deal with Tezzeret within 2 turns typically before they're dead, if you're just playing any kind of combo with this. And then you can also use, play all of your deck almost the next turn. If you untap with a Tezzeret, you have pretty much your entire hand to play because of the affinity ability. That I'm really excited for Tezzeret. I'm interested to see if it actually becomes competitive. I'm not quite sure if it's at that point, but it's going to be in at least semi-competitive decks for sure. It's just already an amazing card. Then you can neg 3, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand, which you can then probably play it for free because you already have so many artifacts out. Then you can neg 8 to exile top 10 cards of your library, put all artifact cards from among them onto the battlefield. So I'm not sure. It's his ability, the +2 ability and his static ability are definitely the best things, but you still get a lot of value from his other abilities as well. So I'm just really excited for Tezzeret. Then our last card for today, of course, is Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, because it's just so good. It is really spicy. It's just a fun card overall. So you can, first off, Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, has loyalty abilities of all other planeswalkers on the battlefield. And I think that right there alone is just why it's so spicy, is because it's the idea of like a spark double, whatever. You can also just have so many options if you are playing the Super Friends deck. And so this is a card that makes you want to be playing Super Friends. And not only that, but it's all other planeswalkers on the battlefield. So it's even their planeswalkers. So it's not just the ones that you control. Any planeswalker on the battlefield, you can tuck their own Teferi. So this is just crazy cool. You pick up, draw a card. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand and or permanent they control, so it gets exiled. And even the gods, they get exiled, but it's not, they have to be exiled from the battlefield for them to shuffle back in, so they just get exiled. They're done. So it's a way to deal with those too if you get it back to their hand. You can neg 3 to destroy target creature or planeswalker, so you can just straight up destroy a planeswalker as soon as it comes out. And then you can -8 each opponent who doesn't control a legendary creature or planeswalker loses the game. And so the fact that first off you can destroy planeswalkers with this, you can get up to -8, and so I'm interested to see how this gets played. There's some really fun things you can do with it, I'm not entirely sure if it's as powerful when it comes to gameplay, because I think there's going to be a lot of aggressive decks. So I'm not sure if it's going to be good enough to compete against some of the aggressive decks, but in Grixis control, there's definitely a possibility that it's still going to be a great finisher, because it just has a win the game condition on this. And anyway, so I'm really excited to see how Nicol Bolas Dragon God goes. Let me know down in the comments below if there's any cards I missed that need to be in this list as well, or on future lists. I'll probably be doing a sleepers list, or probably my favorite uncommon planeswalkers, or just, you know, a couple other videos. And then starting Tuesday, I'll be doing actual deck videos, because of Wizards sponsoring me to be in the event, the event. And so I'm the event for War of the Spark pre-release. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm having a hard time talking today, guys, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much, and bye-bye.